Thank you, everybody, for joining. I really appreciate making the time here to learn a little more about how Salesforce and OBS work together. My name is Pete Karajanis. I'm new to Salesforce, honestly. This is week 5 for me, so I'm not even technically qualified to do this introduction, but I appreciate you making the time to learn a little more about how we work together. I will say that I've been in the industry for a long time, and so certainly you could follow up through Sean or Bruce after the fact if you want to have like a whiteboarding session or something. I've done some of the largest, I've actually done the largest cloud billing deal in history, not with Salesforce, but it's a company, but very familiar with all of the components that are required here. And I know you're in good hands with OBS in terms of guiding you through this process. Just as an aside, I'm kind of going through a renovation right now, and the process of getting a CPQ project implemented is kind of similar. It's technically possible to go to Home Depot and get all the parts and do it yourself. It's not recommended. You're going to need some pros to help guide you through. It seems relatively simple and straightforward, but it actually takes a lot of experience and a lot of guidance. And in many cases, the teams like our partners OBS will make sure that you're thinking about the issues the right way, not just sort of configuring the software. So I won't take too much of their thunder, but again, wanted to thank you very much. And unfortunately, I need to jet because I'm actually triple booked, so I got to go two more of these things right now, not with partners, but with internal calls. So thank you very much. Again, if there's any questions, please follow up with the OBS team, and delighted you can make the time today. Thank you. Enjoy your day.
Thanks, Peter. He's running to do his renovations or deal with the general contractor. So thanks for joining us today. I'm Bruce Bracken. I'm the Eastern Sales Director with Online Business Systems based here in Toronto. Just wanted to give you a little bit of background on, you all know who Salesforce is. Online Business Systems may be new to some of you, and we've actually been around since 1986. And, we've helped numerous organizations ensure their IT systems are ready and available for production. So we're an IT consultancy, started as an application development company, but really focused today on digital transformation and cybersecurity for organizations throughout North America and expanding into Europe now as well. So given our focus today and your interest in the topic of Salesforce CPQ, I just want to highlight a couple of adjacent services online provides that may be of interest. First, with respect to the customer experience side of things, we help organizations streamline the sales process by integrating with their telephony platforms to present customer information and additional context immediately to the salesperson. Secondly, regarding our cybersecurity capabilities, if you're an organization that's taking payment over the phone, we can help you assess and ensure compliance with payment card industry standards. Next slide, please. So a few of the organizations or clients that we've helped unlock greater value from their Salesforce investment. This is just a sampling of them. So from Sales Cloud and CPQ to Service Cloud to integrations using MuleSoft, we've continued to evolve our capabilities with all the great innovations that Salesforce brings to you. That's a very brief overview on online. If there are any questions about us as an organization, you can either ask at the end or now as you prefer. If not, carry on, Sean.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Bruce. Appreciate that. We're going to do a little quick poll with the attendees, if that's okay. Just going to ask a few questions. Those of online obviously don't answer, just X out, but it'd just be good to know, just to understand, does your company currently use Salesforce, yes or no? And then just one question about CPQ. So if you can help answer that question, that would be great. Should take about 10 or 15 seconds to answer both questions, and then we'll just continue from there. That's question number 2. Great, thank you so much for for those who answered. Thank you. Appreciate it. I'm going to pass it over to Roman.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me okay? Yes, great. Thanks, Sean. So my name is Roman. I'm a senior technical Salesforce consultant here at Online Business Systems, and I've been working in the Salesforce ecosystem for a little over 10 years now. So let's dive into Salesforce CPQ. So what does CPQ actually stand for? CPQ stands for Configure, Price, and Quote. And Salesforce CPQ is really a tool that accelerates your org's sales process by reducing the amount of time your sales reps spend on trivial tasks, such as writing proposals. It also standardizes how your quotes are generated, and it eliminates the possibility of any pricing errors. So the configure really allows you to configure your products and services into complex product bundles to suit your business's needs. So you can, for example, group certain products together or have dependent line items in your quote as examples. You then price those service offerings and products by creating advanced pricing rules, discount policies, and by automating all of the pricing calculations required for any quote in your business. And then quote allows you to create a dynamic quote that can be adjusted and resent in minutes using customizable document templates and CPQ's document generation engine. So one of the main benefits of Salesforce CPQ is in error reduction. So internally, an org may have processes that are still paper-based in some way, or perhaps your sales team is reliant on data silos. I still hear stories all the time from organizations where their sales reps, maybe working in isolated Excels that have their leads that they're working through. But that Excel kind of sits isolated there and doesn't speak to anything else. More often than not, moreover, orgs will have a collection of kind of disparate and legacy systems that aren't fully integrated yet with Salesforce. One of the benefits of CPQ is that it digitizes your entire quoting and order management system so that all of the data elements and inputs that would be required, such as product details, customer information, billing terms, and service levels, or SLAs are all standardized in a data model that allows you to reliably and efficiently manage your products, their prices, as well as the quotes and the orders that are sent out to your customers. Another big benefit of CPQ is that document generation engine, which I spoke about earlier. CPQ allows you to standardize all of your documents using its template generation engine, which allows you to build custom templates either in custom HTML or in Visualforce as well. And all the templates are dynamically generated, which means that you can include or remove sections as needed, giving each one of your quotes a clean and customized look. And I just want to quickly hand over things to Nir to talk a little bit, introduce yourself, Nir, and also talk a little bit about renewals and subscriptions.
Thanks, Roman. Yeah, my name's Nir. I'm a principal consultant at Online Business Systems. I have been in the Salesforce ecosystem for just about 8 years with experience on traditional app development and also implementing the core Salesforce products as well. So when we think about subscriptions, we traditionally think of things like magazine and newspaper subscriptions, but the world's evolved and we now have things like video streaming services and food meal prep subscriptions. So Salesforce allows you to manage your subscriptions in a way that makes sense to you. And these subscriptions could work on different terms. So it could be anything from a monthly type of subscription for things like video streaming services. It could also range in the days for things like leasing of equipment. Renewals are handled automatically as well if it's configured as so to automatically create a renewal quote when the main deal is closed. This allows you to start working on the renewal before the renewal time comes, and just helps you better forecast what your forecast projections would look like. Reminders can also be set up to let you know when these renewals are coming up, so you can engage with your customers when it makes sense to. And the renewals can also be set to automatically renew with pricing changes, things like automatically increasing by a certain amount or keeping the price as is. Thanks. I'll hand back to to Sean to carry on.
Thanks so much, Amir. Appreciate that. My name is Sean. I'm Director of Business Development for our Salesforce practice here at Online. Thank you so much again for joining this discussion and this presentation. And a personal story. As a salesperson, it's so easy to just try to sell something, a solution. But when you actually experience the benefits of that solution, everything changes. And I had the privilege of actually working with CPQ when I was at Enercare. 5 years before that, I was working with a partner, and we were selling, CPQ solutions, but we weren't really using CPQ. And when I got to Enercare, we were just transitioning from paper contracts and paper quoting to this digital transformation process where we were handing these iPads over to our sales reps who've been using paper contracts and paper for probably about 25 years. So it was a huge transformation for them. But the efficiencies that we gained were phenomenal. I mean, really, everything really changed with CPQ. And I'll just highlight too, from a consistency standpoint, we finally had the right pricing all the time. And we used to have wrong pricing, wrong quotes, quoting from old price books, wrong price books, all that kind of stuff, just natural human error. It was really, really difficult, and we were losing a lot of money. No more with Salesforce CPQ. Right product bundle. Trying to combine, an air conditioner with a proper air conditioner coil with a proper furnace. It was pretty messy because everybody's knowledge level was different. Pamphlets were different. All that kind of stuff was just pretty messy again. And the product bundles were already set in Salesforce CPQ. And so all they had to do was choose from a drop-down menu, and there were these codependencies underneath. And therefore, the error rate was virtually non-existent. So from right pricing to right product bundles to the efficiency that we gained. From the efficiency standpoint, our sales reps would sit at customers' kitchens or their dining room table and write out a paper contract with the customer's name and address, social insurance number, phone number, all that kind of stuff. And then they'd have to write down these 16-digit codes on that. And now all of that changed. So from about 20 minutes of sitting on a table, we were down to about 5 or 6 minutes, which was an amazing experience. So we know that a lot of companies have pain points when it's quoting. You just ask someone, if you can change one thing about your quoting process, what would it be? And they'd have so many questions, from approvals, and it takes too long to do this, or takes too long to find the information, or we've made some errors, or it's not consistent going out to the client. So many pain points. So I believe in this because I've benefited from it. So I know that Roman's going to basically dive a little bit deeper now into just showing the demo about how powerful this tool really is. Roman.
Thanks, Sean. Yes, let me just exit out of this slide and get the presentation going. Perfect. So now I'm going to demo a CPQ implementation that we did for a company based in Toronto called Park Lane Mechanical. And they provide complex noise control and mechanical sound engineering solutions for residential, industrial, commercial, and manufacturing buildings in the GTA. And what's interesting about the Park Lane story is when we first started working with Park Lane, they came to us and mentioned that they had recently acquired the right to sell a Mason line of industry products, which essentially consists of all of the architectural hangers, the floorboards, and a lot of the, I guess, the mechanical pieces that go into designing and implementing a sound engineering solution like this on residential and commercial buildings. And in acquiring that right to sell a new line of products, this resulted in a massive growth opportunity for Park Lane because they could sell a whole new line of products. But it also kind of highlighted for them some existing challenges that they were facing around their current excuse me, current quoting process. And particularly there were pain points around how long it took for their sales reps to actually send out quotes and close deals. And again, previously they were looking at hundreds of orders every year, but now with this new Mason line of products, they were looking at thousands of orders. And one of the pain points that they came to us kind of with a concern was that it could take a single quote could take hours to generate. And then if there was, an adjustment that needed to be made, or the client came back with, a line item was potentially missing from that quote, then, there was just too much time being spent in their current process to then adjust that quote and send it out again. So there were really three key objectives for our Salesforce CPQ implementation for Park Lane. The first was basically digitizing their entire product line into Salesforce, into a data model inside of Salesforce where they could manage their products. The second one was to basically address the amount of time that it took their sales reps to close those quotes and to kind of make their quoting process more efficient using Salesforce CPQ. And the third objective was just really providing their executive team, as well as their sales reps themselves, some more insights into some key metrics and KPIs using Salesforce Lightning dashboards and reports. And I'm going to dive into each three of those key objectives and give you a demo of the actual Salesforce CPQ implementation that we did. So the first requirement was really digitizing their product line. If you can imagine, previously Park Lane had many of their products along with the information that you would need to actually put on a quote that you send to a customer, such as the factory cost, the shipping weight, and other fields like that. All of that was sitting in localized Excels by product categories. In fact, many of their products they actually had in physical brochures that were that sales reps needed to reference physically. So if you're looking for a particular product, it might not exist in a digitized form, either in Excel or in a database somewhere. They were actually literally, flipping open product brochures and copying the information that they needed, such as the cost and the shipping weight, from an actual physical PDF or a physical brochure. So what we did at Online is we digitized over 12,000 of their products into a Salesforce database. So if I am in Salesforce right now and I open up the Salesforce CPQ app, I can take a look at all of their products here by navigating to the Products tab. And I'll just show you one example. So this is a spring mount for concrete floating floors. This is, I guess, part of their architectural isolation that goes into a noise control project. And we have key fields here, such as the maximum rated capacity that it can take in pounds, a product code so that it's easier to search for this product in the database, shipping weights, product families, and things like whether it's taxable, and the pricing method as well, in terms of how the prices are calculated on the actual final quote itself. So once we had their entire product catalog inside of Salesforce, as a database, along with their prices as well. What we did is then we went into actually implementing Salesforce CPQ out of the box. So I'll walk you through a little bit of kind of, I guess, a user story or a customer success story. So as a sales rep working at Park Lane, I hear from an existing customer that they would like to implement some rooftop barriers for a new residential condo that is being built, as an example. So I would go to the Salesforce CPQ application. I would click on accounts, and then let's say if it was a building for Stark Industries, I would click on that account, and then I would click on that related opportunity, which I already have created here, which is again a new it's a new project to provide some noise control to 10 Bay Street. Once I have the opportunity open here, if I click on the related tab, I'll see here that there are quotes, and I can create a new quote. Okay, let me just quickly associate it to this account. I'm also going to select the sales rep as well, which is myself. And some of these fields will just end up populating on that final quote that we send out, such as contract information, pricing information, freight, and quoting options. So I'm going to hit save here. Now, once I have the quote actually created, I can just hit edit lines up at the top here. And now I'm essentially selecting products from the product catalog at Parklane. This should be a new quote. I'm not sure why it is. Okay, that's okay. Let me try this again. Strange. Okay, sorry about that. I had a previous quote open. I wanted to start fresh. So now that I've created a new quote, what I can do up here is I just can add products as needed. Now, Parklane have over 12,000 products in their product catalog to search through. And there are a number of ways that you can filter through those products. We've broken it down into product families that they can search through. You can also search by the product name and the product code as well. I'm just going to pick some products, some architectural isolations that potentially we need for this build. I can hit select and add more. If I need to add from a different family, I can do that. I'm going to add a couple of these products as well. And then you can also select favorites as well. So if there's, say, some products that need to be included on every quote, you can add favorites. So for example, if there are caulking guns and mixing nozzles, the fiberglass infill and the plywood ply clips, if that's something that we need on every job, we can just select those since they're saved as favorites. So now our quote is...
Sorry, can I ask a question?
Yep. Please.
Just while you're on that part. So I'm intrigued. If you pick one set of features and then you go to the other, the next set, does this in the background check to see if those are compatible?
Yes, absolutely. You can have certain product bundles and dependencies between products as well.
Okay.
Yes, absolutely.
Perfect.
Yeah, no worries. So now we have a quote with a bunch of line items. It's starting to shape up a little bit. I'd like to show you some of the features that you can use declaratively. So first of all, you'll notice up at the top here, there's a markup and a discount. And this applies in real time to the entire order. So you'll notice that the net total, as well as each of these columns, in fact, the factory cost, the customer total, all of this will update in real time. So if I wanted to add a 15% markup to this entire quote, could, and everything is updated in real time. The same can be said for the discount as well. A 15% discount was just applied. What I would like to show you as well, so let's say if I do a 10% discount, sorry, a 10%, yes, that's what I'd like to do, a 10% discount, but let's say one of these line items actually needs a 15% markup. Well, right now I've applied a 10% discount to each of these line items, but CPQ also gives you the ability, if there are additional fields that you'd like to display beyond what each of these columns is, you can also set up a drawer as well. And inside of this drawer, we can actually give an additional discount. So even though there's a 10% discount on the entire order, if for whatever reason one of the items should actually be a 25% discount, we can do that specifically to that item. Another thing that I would like to show you is you can also do a markup either by percentage or by a dollar amount. So if rather than a percentage, we wanted to give, say, for example, the ply clips. If the ply clips needed a $5 markup, we could do that directly there. And one of the custom requirements that came in from Parklane was around the apportioned freight column. And so they needed a column where they could view the cost of the materials being shipped proportionately across the entire shipping cost of the quote. So essentially the apportioned freight is taking the entire shipment weight, because you'll see here the first two columns we have are the quantity, the quantity and the ship weight in pounds. So the apportioned freight is taking the entire shipment weight and dividing it by the weight and the quantity of each line item. So as an example, we see here that this shipping weight is quite heavy. This is 25 pounds each. So if I added a quantity of 5, the shipping weight would increase, and the apportioned freight, the amount that it will cost to ship this item, is significantly greater than the other items, right? And the same thing, if I made this, say, a quantity of 100, even though the shipping weight is not that great, you'll notice that the apportioned freight, in context with the rest of the cost to ship the order, is obviously significantly higher here now. So let's say that this is the quote that I actually want to send out. What I can do is I can hit calculate here. And save. Okay, so now that I have the quote with all of the line items and the products that I want to add and the correct markup or discounts, I can hit generate document here. And this will basically generate that quote into a nice looking PDF that we could then save and email directly to a customer. But I'm not going to do that now. I'm just going to show you a preview of what that finalized quote looks like. I did notice it taking some time. So let me see if I have it saved. Yes, I do have one saved from earlier. Oh, and it did actually finish generating, sorry. Sometimes I get impatient. Let me do this. So here is that finalized generated document, the quote that we sent out, along with the quantities and the unit prices, as well as some shipping and billing details up at the top. So each of these sections up at the top can be customized. Naturally, you have a table with your line items, but for example, additional notes or contract terms, anything like that can be customized and dynamically inserted or removed from the template, and you can have multiple templates depending on the quote that you'd like to send out.
Is there a limitation on line items, or can it be like many, many pages?
It can be
long?
multiple pages, absolutely, yeah. There's no limit on that in terms of the line items that you can have on a quote. But ideally, you can also group them as well, like, what's the template that I had open a second ago? Yeah. You could also group them by product category, or group them by, not group them, sort them. You could sort them by either cost descending, or group them by product families, things like that. Just so it's a little easier to digest. But yeah, definitely you can group the products as well. So let's say that in this scenario, I sent out this quote to the customer, but they came back to us saying that, hey, you know, a line item was missed, or they actually want this product, or maybe an additional discount or an additional markup was negotiated. So what we'd like to do is we need to then resend this quote out with those additions, with those revisions made. But inside of the system, we'd like to keep track of that quote that was originally sent out. So what we can do very quickly is we can click on this quote here, and we can actually clone it with those. We can clone the quote essentially. And what this will do is it'll create a new quote along with the line items that I've specified. And if I just hit clone here, this is going to create a new quote, which hasn't been sent out yet, that I can again edit the lines of. Perhaps change the quantity here. Let's say the quantity was wrong, and we wanted an additional 5% discount on this entire item. We could do that. I'll hit calculate and save. And now I can very quickly send out this revised quote to the customer by, again, just hitting generate document and then emailing it to them. Now, obviously, once this quote is sent, we would update the status of the opportunity to quote submitted. And then, of course, once it's accepted, and approved by the customer, then we could actually move it over into order fulfillment, into an order fulfillment stage. Now, one of the benefits of Salesforce CPQ, along with the actual core Salesforce Sales Cloud license, is that all of the declarative automation that you get access to in Salesforce, you can now kind of use CPQ with as well. So some of the declarative automation that we implemented as part of this project with Parklane was we set up some email notifications and an approval process that gets sent out to the manager for approval if there is a discount greater than 15%. An email goes to the sales rep's manager, and also there's an approval request inside of Salesforce for that as well. I mentioned at the beginning that Parklane also needed greater visibility into some of their key metrics. And so as part of this project, something that we did is we had several 1-hour training sessions with their sales team to show them not only some of the reports and the dashboards that we created for them, but also basically how to use the reporting tools within Salesforce so that they could create their own reports, their own dashboards, and gather some insights that way. I have a few examples of that, which I can show you. So, some of the reports that they needed was essentially the amount of closed sales that they were getting, the amount of leads by fiscal year, as well as the average opportunity sales cycle time by rep. And so these are all some of the reports and the dashboards that we created for them, as well as, for example, quote volume by product type, such as the new Mason product line that they acquired. And by doing all of this, we essentially empowered Parklane's sales team with the ability to quote in minutes instead of hours. And we gave their executive team better insights into their own internal sales and opportunity pipelines. Now, there are a few additional features of Salesforce CPQ that I couldn't go over during the demo, but that I would like to quickly talk on. Let me open this, edit line items. So there are some more advanced possibilities with Salesforce CPQ that we didn't get a chance to go into during the demo. One of them being multi-dimensional quoting, MDQ. So this is an advanced feature in Salesforce CPQ. And essentially what it allows you to do is each of these line items, this represents a product, which we're potentially selling to the customer. But what you can do with multi-dimensional quoting in Salesforce CPQ is it allows you to break this single line item, this single row, into a unit of time, okay? So what that means is if you are selling subscription services that renew annually, what you can do is you can say, okay, well, maybe I want the first month to be free. And maybe the last month is 50% off, but only if they renew for a 2-year term. That's what you can do with multi-dimensional quoting. So essentially, each of these line items, each of your products or each of your services can be broken down into pricing that could vary over the contract term, right? Another is advanced approvals. That's another a kind of advanced feature that you get with Salesforce CPQ. So in the core Salesforce Sales Cloud license, you have approvals that you can create. What advanced approvals allows you to do is, let's say that in your approval process that you've defined, there are 2 approvers. One of them is a regional supervisor, and then the other one is the actual territory manager. So if I submit a quote and it's approved by my regional supervisor, but then it goes to that second round of approval and it's rejected by the territory manager for whatever reason, then as a sales rep, if I make that correction and I resubmit the quote for approval, well, my regional supervisor has already approved that quote. So you could argue that it's redundant for them to approve it again when really I only need that territorial manager's approval. So what advanced approvals allows you to do is create logic for that basically says, hey, it's already gotten one approval, so I only need that second time around. I don't need to ask that for that first approval again. I just need to go straight to that second person. So that allows you to create some, I guess, eliminate some redundancies in your approval processes. The third that I'd like to go over is advanced order management, which again is really just an advanced feature of Salesforce CPQ that allows you to more seamlessly integrate CPQ with your ERP system for order fulfillment. So whether that's SAP or potentially QuickBooks, advanced order management essentially just quickly converts this quote in Salesforce into an order object that you can then send over to order fulfillment, essentially. Let me switch back over to my deck. Are there any questions? Anything either from the demo or some questions you might have about CPQ's capabilities?
On the approval element, is that in the CPQ or is that in Salesforce? When we need to go and automate the approvals, which tool is that actually sitting in?
Sure. So the approvals are directly in Salesforce, the core Sales Cloud license. Advanced approvals is something that you get with CPQ.
Okay.
But you can build fairly sophisticated approvals using the core Salesforce functionality. It's just, again, specifically for that scenario, which I mentioned, where it's like if you'd like to bypass some people conditionally, that's where CPQ's advanced approvals allows you to do that with clicks instead of code.
Okay, great.
So can you explain if somebody needs to add, so the product team needs to add more products into, how does that happen? Is it in the Salesforce or Sales Cloud, or is it in CPQ? What does that process look like? So it is before we start a code, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So if there are new products in your product catalog that you wanted to add, to your Salesforce database, that would just be in the products table, which is a part of the core Salesforce Sales Cloud. And I mean, ideally you could, not ideally, technically you could add each of those new products as a new record within Salesforce. But what we would recommend is, of course, like, formatting it correctly into a data-friendly CSV that you could then import in bulk, right? That's how we did it for the thousands of products at Park Lane, is we imported that as basically a database dump. But you could add new products one by one if you wanted to as well. And to kind of fully answer your question, all of those products sit inside of the core Salesforce Sales Cloud license, like inside of the data model that you get as part of the core Salesforce.
So that's not a part of CPQ license. You're saying that it's part of a Sales Cloud license.
Yeah, you get access to products and price books for those products in core Salesforce. But as part of the CPQ piece, what you get is you get access to some additional objects that allow you to do advanced pricing rules and product bundles. That comes with CPQ because now you're bundling those products and generating a quote, and also you've configured custom pricing rules around your existing product catalog. All of that is CPQ. But if you would just like to, say, for example, search your products or your service offerings in a database, you can do that in core Salesforce, right? But actually generating the quote, building complex automated pricing rules around that, and if you want product dependencies or product bundles, now you're getting into quoting.
CPQ is built on top of the standard Sales Cloud. It's an add-on extending that functionality.
So somebody who's using CPQ all needs a Sales Cloud license plus the CPQ license.
Yeah, that's right.
And if your entire organization is going to be using, let's say, Salesforce Sales Cloud, then the few people that are going to be using the CPQ function would need that additional license, not everybody in the company, of course. And then we can extract information for high-level dashboards and reporting functions through the Sales Cloud via CPQ without having to incur further license costs. So we want to make sure that we're doing this as efficiently as possible and as effectively as possible for our customers.
Got it. Thanks.
And that's a question we get quite often. So if there are any additional follow-ups, now is a good time to ask them. But a common question is, what's that delineation between what am I getting in Sales Cloud versus what that additional CPQ piece is? So yeah, if you have any doubts about that, please do ask.
How often does the pricing rules change, and who does the work of, is that a configuration? So adding a pricing rule, or changing a price rule, or adding a new product catalog to update a pricing rule, is that what function or what role is required for that?
Yeah, I would say somebody functional who knows Salesforce can do all of that declaratively. Again, if you needed to update, if you needed to update more than a few dozen products, I would say that it should be done in bulk. Again, you can do that declaratively using Salesforce's data import wizard. I would say just, a functional BA who knows Salesforce can make all of those updates themselves, really.
And it all depends on what the customer is looking for. Sometimes customers outsource those kind of requirements that happen, could be quarterly, price book change or annual price book change, and hand that over to the partner like us to do that for them to make it seamless. And sometimes there's internal experts that we could potentially even train to do that
Yeah.
and to become independent that way. So it just depends on the appetite of the customer.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Sean, because you reminded me specifically if we're talking about the Parkland presentation that we just gave, there was some additional support that they needed when their new fiscal year rolled around. And there were some configuration steps inside of Salesforce that they weren't exactly sure how to adjust so that they were ready for the new fiscal year. And so we just jumped on a quick call with them. We showed their reps how to do it so that the following year they could do it themselves, right? But definitely, I would say that unless you're looking at something really very complicated, like you're using multi-dimensional quoting with that time aspect, and you have some really, kind of advanced or complex pricing rules where code is needed, I think most of the time you can get away with using it declaratively. It's quite powerful what you can do just, out of the box. And this was an out-of-the-box implementation. Nothing you saw, there was not a single line of custom code that Online wrote. It was just using the Salesforce CPQ product out of the box. Sean, maybe I'll throw it back to you to wrap things up.
Yeah, thank you so much, Roman. And not to rush anybody by any means. If there are any other questions at all that you want to ask, please feel free to do so. But we really appreciate your time. I know you guys are all busy, and we just want to make sure that we give you an option to think about Salesforce and Salesforce CPQ and how powerful the tool is. Like I said, when I worked at Endercare, it revolutionized our business, and I know it can revolutionize businesses out there who are experiencing some sort of pain with their quoting process, and we just want to help. So what we'll do is from next steps is maybe we'll follow up with some of you and just check out and see if we want to get into a further discovery call so we can understand your business more. What are your challenges? What are your goals? What are you looking for in the quoting process? What's present day look like? What does the future look like? And to us, that's where the discovery happens, the magic happens during a discovery call like this. And for us, we're just honored to have you on this call, and we're looking forward to continue to foster these relationships and allowing them to grow. So if there are any other questions at all before we end this presentation, please let me know. So I think
Just
we're
probably
yeah,
one last one, right?
yeah.
What's the difference between the quote in Salesforce Cloud and Sales Cloud versus the CPQ cloud? I guess the advanced functionality is the difference, but can you explain what the advanced functionalities are in the CPQ versus the non-CPQ?
Specifically around the quote object.
Quote, yeah.
Yeah, so it's similar to the products and the price books. You have access to that data model inside of core Salesforce. So you can begin populating those objects, right, with data. But in terms of the actual quote object that you get in Salesforce, the core license, and actually being able to having some sort of user interface where you can, select from your products and put them as line items in your quote, well, you would need to develop some sort of wizard or get a third-party application or add-on like CPQ to then actually start, creating your quotes. You can use the data model. You can, import it with your data and even your previous, quote history from past fiscal years. But to actually have that tool and that user interface where you can, utilize your product catalog and create quotes based on price books, that's the CPQ edition. You won't actually be able to create quotes dynamically in that manner without some sort of sales tool like CPQ.
So the base quote functionality in the Sales Cloud is not automated enough. Is that what?
Yeah, yeah. I would say that that's fair. It's not automated and well, you don't have the same like or turnkey. I guess it's already a turnkey solution where it's already been built for you, and you're just basically you need to import your data and maybe customize the columns that you see. For example, like the apportion freight piece, which I showed you. You already have a very sophisticated user interface tool that you can use to generate those quotes. Without the CPQ piece, you would have the quote object, but you would need to develop something. It could be, I don't know, maybe a multi-step wizard using Salesforce's Lightning Flow Designer, custom Lightning components that you've built in-house, or a third-party product offering like CPQ.
Mm-hmm.
And the nice thing as well is about CPQ is it comes with those integrations, right? Like it can very easily integrate with other industry standards like QuickBooks and SAP and things like that.
Gordon, if I can just add to that. I think, it depends on the complexity. I've worked at organizations where we use straightforward Salesforce and where we've used CPQ. Pete's comment earlier about prerequisites and dependencies.
Yeah.
It's kind of understanding how complex is that as to whether or not it makes sense to build into core Salesforce Sales Cloud deployment versus, yes, really CPQ is going to benefit you a lot. I can tell you some of those things, both from a management standpoint that Roman was mentioning around the approval process, are fantastic, especially when we're working in a more remote world than we were 3 years ago. Just so you have both the manager has visibility to when approvals are required, but then also the rep is looking to who do they need to chase down so that they can get that approved quote out the door. And again, just in terms of standardization, there's a lot of additional benefits to CPQ, I think, in terms of generation of the quote, ensuring consistency, all your T's and C's are noted on every order, and any exceptions that you make as well to that. You've got a strong system of record that enforces all of those things.
So a question on the quoting capability. A lot of what we've talked about is pulling something from a product list, putting it into a quote, and then playing around with the numbers, changing discounts, markups, things like that. We do have a complexity that a lot of our stuff doesn't come from a price book that's standard. So we might have to, if we're selling a circuit, we might have to go out to our carrier group and get them to give us a price from a partner for something, bring that back into the quote, and then add margins and things to it. So is that kind of functionality available in Salesforce out of the box, or is that kind of thing required here? can you even do that? We didn't really talk about the custom ad hoc, one of type quotes. Is that covered in CPQ?
If there are ad hoc, Near, go ahead, maybe speak to it and I'll fill in.
If I'm hearing you right, it's a one-off product or component that you'd like to add to the quote that may have special pricing. And,
Yeah, think of it as I don't know, if you're looking at the concrete thing, I can get you this concrete thing, but each one's a custom one. So I'll have to call a supplier. They'll tell me about this concrete pad for your example, but it's not in a price book. The product name might be, but the pricing would be custom for everything we develop. How would that get handled?
yeah, I think in the same way that we can add these products and add pricing to them, you'll be able to add anything ad hoc as well. So if you do get a
Okay.
new product that is added, you can have different types of prices attached to them. And depending on whichever factors apply to the price, you can
Good.
use a different pricing model in different quotes going forward as well.
Okay, so if I were to pull, I'm going back to your example, 5 line items from the product catalog and bring them in, and I realize, wow, one of them I need to go and find an alternate source for. If I got the flexibility to go in and change the cost of that one.
Yes, you could do price overrides,
Okay.
absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
And there was a requirement at Parkland where specifically there were a few products where if you select those products, it's expected and required that you're going to override the price. Just very similar to the example that you gave,
Yeah.
that each of them is custom and they're always going to need a price override. So as soon as you add that line item, it knows to expect a custom price.
Okay, while I'm actually thinking about that, is there somewhere we can, in the quote, document where the price came from? So think of it as a paper trail on, hey, how'd you come up with that price that you put in there? Is that in there somewhere?
You could definitely do something like that. It would need to be maybe a custom field that either is text-based or connects to that third-party system. But absolutely, you could have a footnote or even in the actual line item, like in italicized, that this price comes from such and such. Yep.
Good, okay.
So in the off chance, if that ever gets quotes again and it's not a one-off, let's say it's a two-off, someone will know exactly which vendor that was and how much they priced it for. And they can go back to that same vendor and see if it's the same pricing or see what's happened with the price, if it's increased or decreased. At least you have a point of reference at that point.
Yeah, or you just go, hey, we lost money on this. Who the hell made this price? So we can go after and find
Exactly.
out who jerry-rigged the thing and went through the price system. It's ripe for scamming if you do it right. There's a lockdown provision to this. I don't want the sales guys to be able to go in and say, oh, here's the cost of my product, so I can bring my price down. No, hang on.
Correct.
There's got to be a paper trail or a approval level in behind there somewhere.
Yes, absolutely. And we can put those rules in place to make sure that nobody just goes in and Jimmy rigs the whole thing and then sends something out that's not appropriate.
And sales guys would never do that.
Never. I've never.
Nope.
No
I'll
sales
plead the
reps ever
fifth.
do that kind of thing. Not even a quarter in.
That's a good one. These are great questions. Very, very practical questions for practical solutions. So that's great. Any other thoughts while we're here?
I was just going to comment, Sean. So Pete, if any of you want to do that deeper dive, right? Again, that discovery is where you uncover those exceptions, those other things that you go, well, what about if this happened, right? So there's the reality you live in today, and then we always know in the future there's going to be an exception. So again, great to have those discussions with you and tell you about what you can do with core Salesforce versus where CPQ's really going to benefit you.
Yes,
So
absolutely.
if we're doing a quote, I've got a particular scenario that I'd love to explore a little bit. So you talked about renewals. So we have a renewal coming up, let's say a year from now. And so the tool wouldn't tell me about it until I tell it to tell me, right? 6 months ahead, 3 months ahead, whatever. It could create a new renewal automatically, I guess. Ours don't really work that way. Ours, you'd have to revisit each of them. But suppose I wanted to take a look at a renewal today. I have a deal. It ends in a year. And at that point, I want to talk to my customer today about renewing the deal. So rather than wait a year, I'm going to do it now, but I want their current contract to end in a year, like it is. And at that point, I'm going to renew it for 4 years, pick a number. But the price then is going to go down. Can that be covered off in the tool as simply as saying, okay, on this date, the price goes to here, and it documents it in the quote? Is that possible?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Because
And it would
it
show
depends.
that
It depends on the effective date of the contract, right?
the contract's existing now.
Mhm.
So the effective date of the change would be a year from now,
Right.
but the
Yeah.
contract's still in void. So effectively, we're extending a contract by 4 years. So it's now, I don't know, however long it was to start. Are there any complexities in that? Because we need to be able to spit out the billing at the other end of this thing so that we can bill for it. And nobody's going to remember in a year from now to change that price.
No, but if you negotiate, like in the example that you gave,
Yeah.
you're talking to them now, a year from now, and you're saying, well, you're negotiating a 4-year deal, so obviously the price will go down, but they're already signed right now. There's already a contract in place for the next 12 months. And
Okay.
so that existing pricing will be valid for these 12 months. And then as soon as that expires, the 4-year contract, which they signed for a cheaper rate, will
Yeah.
go into effect.
Okay, and Salesforce will be smart enough to be able to say, look, here's what the revenue expectations are of all the deals that we have. In a year from now, that's going to change, go down by whatever the change was.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah,
Good.
as long as the data is entered in correctly and those dates, are correct on the contract, then yeah,
Yes.
absolutely.
No, of course not. Yeah, you got to start with that assumption.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you can see the versatility of this tool. It's very scalable, very versatile to handle complex situations. And the more complexity, the better.